My guest today is Travis Cook.
So I have started a movement called the Climate Con, and we've been going for nearly 3 years now. And it was off the back of when there was the COVID thing happening here. There's a lot of activist energy around, and then that calmed down. And it was like, what's the next biggest narrative we're being hit with here in the UK and around the world? And it was quite clear to me it was the climate. So I just started with a trial, this with an Instagram page, and like, let's see how this does. And got the name, the Climate Con, and it did quite well. But there was clearly a demand for people getting this kind of information. And so not long after starting the Instagram, started a website, and then that did really well. And then wrote a book, and then we've gotten leaflets, and now I've got a new book, which is literally coming out in a couple of weeks, which is really exciting. What we do is question and challenge the official narrative around all of this climate stuff, but also try and keep it fun and simple and entertaining, because it could be quite technical, and there's all of this sort of scientific papers and white papers, and for a lot of people, they don't want to read that sort of stuff, but they're still interested. And so this is what we do. We sort of break it down simply and get it to a level that anyone could understand this. In fact, the beginner's guide to the Climate Con, this book, the first book, you can see that, okay, yeah. That people brought that for homeschools, and I said, that's such a great idea. So I donated some to homeschools, because even if, as soon as you're old enough to be hit with the climate propaganda, you can start reading this book to counter it.
You're just kind of everywhere at once. You're doing so much, pumping out so much content. It's just you?
Yeah, it's all me. So I do all of it, the website, the newsletters, the social media. Yeah, it's all the graphics design and the writing. Yeah, at some point I did put it out there that we need some people, but it all come together that I do it all. It is quite a bit of time, and I do enjoy it, but thankfully I can do it. And thanks to the support of the community as well, that enables me to be able to do this very important work.
Yeah, you're making me feel pretty lazy, because I kind of just do a podcast and a little Twitter, but you're doing a number of podcasts. You've had Paul Burgess, Robert Ian Holmes, James Corbett on your podcast, and you're writing the books, and you're doing the leaflets and the billboards. You want to talk about the billboards?
Yeah, that's really exciting. So that's brand new. That's inspired off the back of the CO2 coalition. They did this in the United States, and I saw that and I thought, that's such a brilliant idea. We need something like that here in the UK. And what we're going to start off with is a bus stop advertisement. I think seeing this on a bus stop is just going to be absolutely epic. Something like this, and because these memes have done really, really well on Instagram and Facebook, and they've gotten millions of views. But what they do is they so quickly and simply break down the sea level rise agenda. Within seconds, you can see, look, there hasn't been a perceptible sea level rise increase in over 100 years. And I think that's so powerful, because within seconds, it's like, wow, yeah. And it's like a common argument people have is like, yeah, but it's been this much, it's been that much, low tide, high tide. And I'm like, we can't even see it. It can't be that bad. You can't. So we're going to be getting that on the first week of October. We're going to have the first bus stop, and then we'll go from there. I think perhaps then a billboard, or even on the side of a bus. I found a really great company that's on board with all of this, and they seem quite enthusiastic. So who knows where we can go with it after that, because the first company I did try, they were really up for the idea, but then they saw the design. They're like, whoa, no way, man. We can't touch this. But thankfully, this other company they've seen the design. I've given them the design. They know everything that's happening. And then we're going to be trying, I don't know, you probably heard about Reform here, right? The political party, going to try it in their areas first, because they've shown that when they have a little bit of power, they will go against this narrative. And they've cut funding for like electric buses, and they've declared that there's no climate catastrophe in these different counties that they have won local elections in. So let's try in their areas first, because that seems like we'll have the most success, and then we'll go from there.
Are you in contact with some of the other folks that are doing research on the streets in the UK, like Montgomery Toms or Nezra and Veronica or Yellow Boards people?
Yeah, so I've met Monty. I've done an interview with him, actually. He's really great. I think he's doing really, really good work there. And well, throughout my 10 years as an activist during the COVID era, I was really sort of catapulted to the top echelons of all of this sort of stuff. That's another story with the Great Reopening. There's a really solid network here of, I guess, a lot of activists sort of behind the scenes, the underground scene, if you like it, that are doing a lot of work still and have done a lot of work. It's really, really quite awesome. The yellow boards, they're good. They're sort of decentralized. You'd have a group over here, a group over there. There's no one leader of the yellow boards, which is quite cool. For the Climate Con, we did an event in London where they had all of their climate boards, and I had my leaflets, and that was a really good day. Yeah, because a lot of the time, they'll have their boards, but it will be like 10 different messages in one, between a small group of people. And I mean, there could be something to that. I get why they do that, but then I think there's actually power in just honing in on one subject. And so that's what we did as an event or two, and that was really good.
So just so I understand your background, you were kind of all in on the COVID, pushback against the COVID madness for a while, and then you've switched over to all in on pushing back against climate mostly?
Yeah, so when I woke up like 13 years ago now, and I've tried so many different ways of fighting back against this agenda that's, trying to enslave us, it seems. And then it was when COVID kicked into gear, it was like, this is the main thing to focus on right now. And I created a movement called the Great Reopening that when I created it, it went absolutely viral. This was in like January of 2021. And it was about getting the businesses to open peacefully, defy the lockdown measures, just open your business. The Great Reopening, 30th of January. There's quite a story that could go with all of that, but it's just, we had 10 days, we get all of the businesses open, and It was a crazy idea, but it must have resonated with the people because I just created this Telegram group. Within a week, it had over 10,000 members. We had all of these national, local groups. Even Ireland had its own division, and all of this stuff was happening. The YouTube was launched; it was getting millions of views instantly. It was absolutely crazy. I had Sky News contact me wanting an interview, and all this stuff came together because I guess it was such a dark period of our time, of our history. It was like Boris was like, "Yeah, we'll lock down until like April. No, we'll do it till June. No, September. It just looks like it's going to be locked down forever." And it was really, dark period, and so. There was like, I don't know, opening Pandora's box. It was like, this is the time, this is it. We had some success. I think it played quite an important role. Trying to do a peaceful revolution of the mind. I would say take a bit longer than 10 days to do that. But maybe there was something to what we did. But that put me right at the top of all of the other activist stuff that was happening. And then it wasn't too long before I became a part of Unite for Freedom, which was the collection of all of the biggest activist groups at the time. You had Save Our Rights, Stand in the Park, Stand Up X, Official Voice, Piers Corbyn, Stop New Normal. All of these groups were meeting to organize the protests that happened in London. And they were some of the biggest protests this country's ever seen. And there was so many of them. We did one a month. And at the peak, we believe we got over 1 million of these protests. The police said 750,000. We think it was over 1 million. But it was a crazy, crazy time. And so that was, I guess, the peak of my activist career, and where I got to know a lot of people, and a lot of people got to know who I was, and then that calmed down towards the end of 2022, and that's when the climate became like my main focus. I knew it had been an issue for a while, but I'd never looked into it really, really deeply until then.
So during your COVID pushback, how much censorship did you find, either doing this on the street or social media? Or on the street, were you threatened with jail, or how did this all go?
So when we launched the YouTube, it did really, really well. Then that ended up getting censored and banned. It was a shame. We had 22,000 subscribers when that got banned. Telegram was really good because there was no censorship. And that was the main thing that we ran the operation through. And it was very, very good. Instagram was sort of in the middle. It was like, it was good, but then you get a bit of shadow banning here and there, but it didn't completely delete my account, and that's been useful because I still use that account to this day. But then on the ground, the first protests that were done, I wasn't involved with. They were, freedom before I was involved with it. They got jumped on by the police because there wasn't so many of us. We're breaking the COVID mandates, all this stuff. But then once we grew in size, and there's hundreds of thousands of us, the police could not stop us. I think they just got their brief from their commander-in-chief, who's just like, let these guys do what they want to do. They've seen they're generally peaceful. They'll just do their march, do their outreach, and then they'll go home. But if we have that many people, we could do whatever we want. We could storm Westminster. We might lose a few bodies in the process, but we could literally do whatever we want with that many people. So the police at that point went from shutting them down very violently to actually just being like marshals. And there'd be all over the protest, but a lot at the front. And obviously I'm at the front trying to lead this monster of an army of freedom fighters. And they would go ahead and clear the road, which was actually very useful. The unfortunate thing was is the protesters at the front, you know, we're the rebels. We don't even really want to be following the leader of the march. We just, you know, weird, whatever. But when they see that the police are ahead of us, a lot of them are like, why are we following the police? I'm like, no. The police are like in real time catching up to us. They're just clearing the traffic. Actually very, very helpful. And they were quite courteous, I'd say. They were quite respectful. Once we've got the power, they got out of the way. There was one time a separate protest I did just for the great reopening outside of Unite for Freedom that we did get arrested, but that was only because there was only a few of us. There wasn't the big numbers. So it's all about a power game, I suppose. But then after a while, I ended up getting de-arrested, and there's a little story behind that. But that was that was interesting. Yeah, so that I guess that's the takeaway. Once we had the power, they just got out of our way.
Were you involved at all in these recent marches in the streets that I heard about in the last week or two in the UK?
So that's more Tommy Robertson's thing now. He's taken the baton, and he's doing some really cool things with Unite the Kingdom. And I think he's doing some really great work. People are a bit skeptical of him and what he's doing, but I think overall it's a massive positive, and I resonate a lot with what he's saying. And no, it's not. I'm not involved anymore, though. Not in the big ones like that. Maybe now, though. There's now, because of the push for digital ID, is literally just coming to the forefront here in the UK. We might see a bit of a resurgence. Just a few of my activist friends are starting to talk again, like, okay, look, we might need to get mobilized again in some way, shape, or form, but we'll see what comes.
So as far as that YouTube censorship, I think you had 20K subscribers on one channel, but just in the last week, we're hearing that YouTube is saying, just kidding, we shouldn't have done that, and we're going to let you back on. Is that happening? Have you heard anything about that channel?
Well, so I would have to get access to old emails and stuff, but I don't know, maybe, I don't know if that was going to roll out all over the world or if it was just the United States. It'd probably be quite helpful to get that account back, although I might need to rebrand it because the Great Reopening has dissolved now, essentially. It came in with a bang and it left with a bang once we got out of lockdown, because that was its sole purpose, was to get us out of lockdown. And once we achieved that, once we're out of lockdown, there wasn't really much of a need for the Great Reopening anymore. So all of that infrastructure, all of the movement is pretty much ended now. And I've rebranded the Instagram page that survived. But if they were to give it back, somehow if I get access to the email again, the Great Reopening email, and they're like, yeah, man, here's your account. Well, sure, I'll just change the name and I'm sure it'll be useful.
I am curious about this whole reopening of social media a little bit. Like, they deleted one of my podcast episodes and then they just put it back up because Steve Malloy said something about election fraud, and they put it back up later. And then James Corbett had a huge channel that all of a sudden reappeared, I think, in recent months. And
oh, nice.
Yeah, they're loosening up for sure. YouTube's loosening up on the COVID thing. I did want to ask you about you're putting climate stuff on Instagram and Facebook, and you're not being censored much there, or they're allowing you to speak out there?
Well, this is a really awesome transition that I've noticed this year. If we turn back the clock about a year, maybe a year and a half, I'm getting notifications from Instagram and Facebook saying, we're going to ban your site. You can't post the Great Climate Con in your bio. You can't post it in the links on any of your posts, like all of this stuff. And it was like, you can keep your page, but you can't put the website on. And then it's been this year. First, it was Instagram. I've noticed the algorithm has gotten significantly better. It's way, way better. Like, I've reached, from just Facebook and Instagram, over 30 million views this year. And it's so much better now. And for having used it for like 5-6 years, for the first time ever, it's like we're not swimming against the stream. Finally, it's actually flowing with us. And it's not just my account. I've noticed that, like you mentioned, Montgomery Tom's, his account, for example, or my friend Nacho's, or just all of these other activist political accounts are suddenly getting way more reach, which is really, really awesome. And then just recently, about a month and a half ago, I've had a Facebook account for the Climate Con for 2.5 years, and I've been posting very consistently, and it never really got much traction, but I kept posting, and suddenly one video got loads of views. I got more followers in a weekend than I did in the 2.5 years prior, and that was really amazing. I kept the momentum going a little bit, and then suddenly I'm getting the opposite, the complete reverse of what I was getting a year and a half ago. And Facebook are like, hey man, we're boosting your reach. You're now going to be getting even more because of this, because of that. And it's really working. I can see now, I even, like I posted a picture of my new book and it's got a link to it and everything. And you think these apps, they tend to sometimes derank posts that have link on because it takes them away from the app and whatever. They want to keep you on the app. No, this is done really, really well. And I'm just like, wow, this is what it feels like to have Facebook actually on your side. And I do think that is because of something to do with Trump, the Trump administration. They have influenced the social media in one way or another. That's my biggest guess, because the timing is absolutely on point. It was like once Trump come in and there was maybe some meetings or something, the algorithm has changed and way more in our favor.
Okay, do you think that the Musk buying Twitter also had a big effect, that somehow, since he opened up Twitter at least somewhat, that the other sites opened up because of that? Or mostly you think it's the Trump effect, huh?
Yeah, so perhaps those combined, I reckon there's, well, let's hope so. Maybe the long-term game of where we're going, it could still end up in a bad place. But right now, it looks like there is a concerted effort from a group of people that have power and are actually on our side, which is great. At least for now. X, like you say, has opened up. That's way more freedom of speech, and you can post whatever and you won't get censored. And then it wasn't too long after that Facebook and Instagram followed suit, Instagram first. So maybe, who knows where we would have been if Musk hadn't brought Twitter and changed it. Who knows if that sort of set the playing field. Now, the other, exactly why the social media have changed their algorithm is interesting, because it's like, are they just trying to catch up because they're seeing it's a market thing and that they're losing their share? Or have their hand been forced because now it's freedom of speech, pro-freedom of speech people in positions of political power? I don't know. One or the other.
How about freedom of speech in the UK itself, that you still can get thrown in jail today for the wrong tweet still, or no?
Oh, yeah, 100%. It's... although we do have the ability to post, it's getting better and our reach is getting better, still a lot of people are going to jail literally just for tweets. And it's crazy, man. People are getting more jail time for tweeting something about like a race or whatever, or inciting violence, than the people who actually are committing these violent or sexual abuse acts. So it's absolutely backwards and twisted. There's definitely what we call the two-tier policing happening here. And I do think there's an agenda there to silence and stop people from expressing views against the narrative. And there's a few key things that they don't want people talking about that they are going pretty hard on with the censorship. I mean, personally, I can't see any other way. I think I have to keep speaking the truth, whatever comes. We can't just end up, because what I think they want to do is get us to the point where we self-censor. So we're like, oh, I better not post that because the government might do da 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 da. And if they can do that, that is way more powerful. They just have to use a few scapegoats, get a few people that, you know, and then suddenly everybody else is worried about it. But it's like, you have to, I don't see any other choice, because I don't see, if we at this stage were to self-censor, it's just going to get worse from this point onwards. We have to fight now and keep speaking the truth now. And I do believe we can actually stop what's happening, but right now it is seemingly quite dark, and I have to take precautions for myself and the ability for people to find out where I am and so on, because that is in the back of your mind, like, what if the government tracks me down? And you see people not going to jail for social media posts, but what can you do, man? You got to keep speaking the truth.
So do you see individual people following you over from the COVID pushback to the climate pushback?
Yeah, so that was a beautiful silver lining to all of the COVID madness, was that it woke a lot of people up. For many, many years, it felt like there wasn't really much of a movement, so to speak. There was pockets of us here and there, but since then, there was a massive wave of people that started questioning all of this, which was really, really, really helpful. And so with the climate stuff, though, what I'm finding is, because for the most part, you're bringing people the good news, it's actually way easier to get this message out to people. They want to resonate. They want to hear. Even when I'm handing out like these leaflets, like we've done over 50,000 of these leaflets all over the country. And when I'm doing outreach to people, I go, would you like a leaflet? And some people say yes, some people say no. Some people are like, well, I'm not sure. And I just go, it's good news. and the acceptance rate goes up dramatically. So who doesn't want some good news, you know? So I think that is really, really powerful. I think that's why our message is really getting out there, because it's bringing the good news, but also it is questioning the established narrative, which has been completely built upon with fear and propaganda. So I think it leaves it quite vulnerable in one way.
Yeah, that's a good point, that people don't want to read a leaflet saying that CO2 is going to kill us all. It's going to kill your kids. That's not a very fun leaflet to read. Good point. Why don't you talk about your books? I have your book I have an ebook. It's called, let me check. Is it The Beginner's Guide to the Climate Con?
Yeah, that's it. So
yeah,
that's actually started out as an ebook, and what I was seeing is, yeah, this agenda can be quite, the whole subject can be quite dry and boring, and for a lot of people, they don't need to get too technical, but they just need to get the basics and the facts. And I'm not even a scientist myself, but I've researched from the scientists and the really, really smart people, the professionals in this field, and gotten all of their wonderful information and just condensed it down. And it's so easy to understand. I mean, the wording it's like I say, this could go, it's just simple. It's got nice pictures and graphs, and it's very easy to read. And, you know, it's like, a child could read that book, like an 11-year-old child could pick up that book and understand it. And we go through the global warming, we go through the CO2, the electric vehicles, the renewables, all of the different parts of the agenda, sort of broken down quite simply. But then I felt that worked really well for people. But as my knowledge is increasing, as everybody's knowledge is increasing here, and there's more graphs, there's more data. Now we're at the advanced stage, which this is the first ever copy right here, and I've got a few edits to make. But this is what's coming out in a couple of weeks, and it's about 3 times the content. You probably can't see it on the screen, but it's significantly thicker than the other book, and it just builds upon everything that we laid the foundations in the first book. And ultimately, yeah, it is just the good news explained simply and made fun.
I'm just double checking here. Will you be selling this stuff all on Amazon or all through your website, or where will it be?
So yeah, all of this is available through the greatclimatecon.com, and it's all self-published, so we haven't had to go the usual route, which is really awesome. And I think I'd much rather have it just sold exclusively through the website than using Amazon. So yeah, that's where we have all of the material, all of the articles, the books, the podcasts.
And will you be taking some time to put this out in Audible format or in audio format, do you think?
Yeah, that would be great. I did that with the beginner's guide, and that didn't take too long. So I think I should do that again. Honestly, I'd almost forgotten about doing audio books. There'd been so many other things going on. But yeah, I should definitely do that for the advanced guide.
I would say, just for me personally, I think I consume, 20 times as much stuff via audio than just print. So something to think about. And then I don't know if you mentioned that you are doing the Children's Guide to the Climate Con. That's coming up.
Yeah, that's going to be the next one. And that would be, what I envisioned is that would be a book that's read by the parent, the first ever child's book that they read to their kids. And I've got a bit of a brief, and maybe I could do a few of them, because there's not much to it content-wise. There's not that many words, as you can imagine, but it's just getting a nice story that's going to paint CO2 in a positive light. And I'm thinking, if we just take the child through a journey of what happens with the element of carbon, and you'll get the right words so it's not too confusing, but look, carbon starts out in a star, and then it becomes you, and then it becomes me, and it becomes the food, and it does this, and this shows that it's literally just the building block of life. And I think there'll be a good chunk of people that would really like that. I don't know if they have this book that's popular in the United States, but I really like the book The Hungry Caterpillar. It's just so simple. Yeah, it's just like, I loved that book as a kid. So I'm thinking, let's just get a climate messaging, pro-carbon version of that, sort of. That's the idea.
See, are you in contact at all with the CO2 Coalition? Because they're doing some related work too on children's content, climate content for kids.
They're amazing. I've had Gregory on, actually. He was the first guest I had on. Gregory Wrightstone is the founder of that, I believe. I think he's the founder, or at least the manager now. He was the first guest for the ClimateCon podcast, and I think they're doing amazing work over there. They're a great group of people, and obviously they're a bunch of scientists too. So they have the qualifications that some people like to see. All of these letters, and so they're a good source of information. And I haven't actually seen their. I know they were doing stuff for kids. I'm sure they had a kids book, but I haven't read it. Maybe I should, just to get a bit of inspiration on what they've done. But no, I think they're an amazing movement, what they're doing.
So again, there's this narrative that you're showered with a big oil money, that you're so well funded. Is that true?
Yeah, I mean, I wish. I really think BP. I could probably invoice BP for who knows how much because our messaging just happens to be aligned with hydrocarbons, and it just so happens to be that that's what I found the truth to be. That right now, our society would benefit massively if we were just using this cheap, reliable, abundant source of energy. But no, we're completely 100% community funded. I understand the CO2 Coalition, they do get some funding from the fossil fuel industry, or that's what I've told. That's what I've been told. I don't know. I haven't looked into it too much. But the thing is, even if BP did give us all this money, we just report the truth. So I don't think much would actually change. Maybe I'd be able to get more leaflets out to people because we'd have the backing of big money. But if at any point we discovered different truth, or whatever we discovered, I'd have to report that. So I think it's good that we're not beholden to a company, we're not beholden to a political party. There's none of that. It's all completely community funded. It's very small margins, but we get a little bit of money per book sale, we get a little bit of money per 100 leaflets. And so that's what enabled me to do this work. And I think it's brilliant. It's so, because it's grassroots funded, community by the people, I can publish whatever I want, and that obviously what I'm going to find is the truth, so I'm not restricted in that way.
So do you have any ideas as to why big oil isn't actually funding climate skeptics, at least hardly at all? Do they somehow they want the climate scam to continue because they can make money somehow out of it, or what do you think?
Well, so that is a part of it. When you look into it and you look at Rockefeller and where his money's been going and how it affects the price of oil, and yeah, it's actually like a clever sleight of hand, it seems, by some of these companies and individuals, that if they can make oil harder to get hold of and increase its price, then they actually benefit from that. So maybe that's why they haven't gone ahead with it. It sounds kind of weird, right? But when you look at, well, that's how they could make more money, then suddenly it kind of makes sense. On the one hand, they should be throwing money. They should have an endless supply of money from people because of how it would affect their business in that one way. But maybe they don't want to do that, and perhaps it's best that it isn't like that. Who knows?
So it sounds like you're looking at the climate scam at the very lowest level about whether the weather's getting worse and all this stuff, but also you're looking at it from a higher level as to what's really going on here. Are we being pushed towards a digital ID and central bank digital currency? How do you think the UN is thinking about this right now? Do you think they're looking at the handwriting on the wall and thinking this scam is not working? Or do you think they're still just going to keep pushing for decades? What do you think?
Well, so this is what's been great so far about the Trump administration, because they, on the climate side of things, have shown that they are going to go against a lot of this. And that is awesome because it gives a bit of hope. And who knows, like I said earlier, maybe in the future there'll be a bait and switch and something more terrible comes along. But right now there are good things happening that I would do if I was in that position of power. And you've got Chris Wright, your energy secretary, who's commissioning reports from like Judith Curry and people similar to that. And it's like, that's brilliant. Like to have that material, like I couldn't imagine Ed Miliband having anything like that. And so that gives hope that we can defeat this. So it might just be a case of, let's hope that the United States continues in the trajectory that they are already, continues to dismantle the climate scam in every single way that it can. And if we're lucky, reform will be our version of that. And we've seen that when they have a little bit of power, they have gone against the agenda. They've cut funding. They've said there's no climate catastrophe. So we can assume that once they win, I do actually think they're going to win the next general election. When they win that, then this in the UK will be pretty much over. It'll be a bit of a transition period. I imagine another couple of years of sort of dismantling all of this apparatus and agenda. But then it could well be over at that point. I mean, when I first started the Climate Con, I was like, this is going to be a 5-year minimum thing. There's no point doing this for more than 5 years, for less than 5 years. Now we're nearly 3 years into that. And I still think probably about another 5 years. But then it might be like the Great Reopening. Once we've defeated this part, it could be we don't actually need to have this anymore. And I might change it, or I don't know what I would do. I'll find something, I'm sure. But that'd be great, obviously. If we do win, then it'll be like, well, what's next? Because who knows if... So this is one battle that we are facing right now. It's not the only thing that's happening on our planet. And we look at... Once you follow it far enough, you just see it's the same individuals, the same group of people that are just doing whatever they can to maintain their power and control over the population and increase the amount of power and control that they have to further their agenda, which ultimately, I think it just stems down to enslavement of the human race. So that they are still will stay at the top of this human pyramid of humanity, and they'll keep all of the wealth, keep all of the power, keep all of the influence, and stay there. And so the climate's just one tool. They don't actually care about the environment at all, and that's why they're demonizing CO2. It's not about the environment, it's about control. And so digital ID is another part of that. And you can see that the combination of the two, the climate con coming together, the digital ID, and suddenly you only get so many carbon credits, and you can only buy one steak per week at the supermarket, for example, because otherwise you've gone over your amount of carbon credit allowance. That's the level of control that they actually want to have. And you only have to look at China, where I don't think they have the carbon credit system quite, but they do have the social credit scoring, and it's very, very high surveillance, and they can deduct money instantly from your bank account. And so all of this very sort of dystopian stuff is literally happening in China. And you see the slow rollout here, and a lot of it is being done under the guise of climate, like the ULEZ in the London is being claimed that it's for air quality and air pollution, but it's like, pay $12.50, suddenly that doesn't matter. Suddenly the emissions, whatever's coming out of your car, doesn't matter if you pay $12.50. But they have, in the process, installed a massive amount of surveillance and cameras, and now they've gotten even more of all of this surveillance over the people, and it's like, that's just using the climate. And so if we do win, I don't think it'll be the end if we win the climate battle, but then they will be significantly weakened, and then it could be a case of, well, what do we focus on next? And I think, well, we'll know when we get to that point, but then it could be things like the monetary system, and immigration's a big problem, and so on. But honestly, I don't know. They will be like limping with one leg if we, or when we defeat the climate con. They will be in a bad situation.
So remind me of the timeline, though. Is it still 4 years until reform could take over?
Yeah, about that. Yeah, just under. So unless there's a snap election called by Keir Starmer, but if he doesn't care about his reputation and he's got enough of the MPs on board, there's no reason for him to call a snap election. I can't. It's like, why would he want to give away power knowing he's probably never going to get it back and Labour are done for? He can just have his... Who does he care if he gets a 1% approval rating? If nobody can actually get him out of his position of power, I think he'll probably keep it. We'll see, unless there's enough of a revolt from within Labour and they have a vote of no confidence and get him out that way. It's probably going to be another, just under 4 years.
I'm curious, when you're out in the streets today in the UK and you're talking to just random people as they walk by, what % of them do you think have any awareness of the climate scam, or they are aware that this digital ID thing could be used to control our lives? Are people kind of aware or not at all?
I actually think people are getting there. They might not know all of it, but here and there, like even just a couple of days ago, like I was in this sauna and I'm talking to some of the guys there, and it was an ex-police officer, and I was like, oh, how was, being in the police force? And he was like, it was good, but now I'm glad I've retired because of all of these boxes got to be ticked, and all this DEI woke stuff is ruining it. And as he's saying that, there's another guy who's like, yeah, man, I'm in the train industry, and it's exactly the same. So it's like, I think people are starting to really, really get it. Once you actually start talking to people, there'll be one reason or another, people are starting to get it. And so I think that's why Reform is starting to actually look like a serious party here.
Yeah, as of right now, Reform is doing very well in the polling, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. And they smashed the by-election that we had and gained a lot of power. And so I do think that right now they're the answer, because unfortunately, what I've seen a lot of here in the UK is we've gotten so disenfranchised with politics and the political system that a lot of people that are awake and actually would be really, really effective in the political realm have just checked out. Because all we've known here for like 100 years, for such a long time, all of our lives, is either Labour or Conservative. And they've each taken their turn to run this country into the ground. And people are just like, I give up. There can't be any hope in politics at all. And I honestly think our enemies actually want that from the people. They want people to believe that there is no political solution, so that we check out and they just take over and have all of the reins of power in our political system. But I do still have hope that there can be good people in positions of political power. And I've seen it happen, and we're seeing it happen most effectively in the United States. But also, a good question I like to ask people is, do you believe evil has complete control? And majority of people won't actually say yes to that. They'll be like, no, I don't think they do. There's a few people that are black-pilled, and that's a terrible state of mind to be in. And they're like, yeah, they have complete control, and everything that happens is completely orchestrated by them, and it's always disempowering me. And that's a terrible state of mind. You don't want to be there. But that's what happens, I think, when people don't have any of the spiritual stuff to balance this stuff out, which provides the more empowering perspectives. And actually, you can use this to become a more effective activist. I've definitely used spirituality to be more effective in my activist work. And I don't believe evil has complete control here. And if they don't, it's an important distinction to make. They might have a lot of power, but if they don't have complete control, that means that just because they have an agenda and they sound confident, it doesn't have to be successful. If enough of us come together and say no, we can stop their agenda. And we actually saw this in the COVID activist days. The clearest example that I give to people is when they tried no jab, no job. There'd already been a massive activist movement behind this, so there's a good foundation, but they tried no jab, no job. They did it for the care workers, and there wasn't enough of a resistance. And it became a policy that if you wanted to work in care workers in the UK, you had to have one of the COVID jabs. Then they tried it with the NHS, and suddenly a massive resistance appeared. There was the NHS 100K. There was big protests in London. There's this doctor, Steve James, I think his name, went viral, challenging Sajid Javid about the COVID jabs and this policy live on Sky News. And then there was legal actions happening. All of this came together that they had to stop the no jab, no job policy. And who knows how far they would have gone had we not had this resistance. And if we'd just been, okay, look, they said they're going to do this, so there's going to be successful, and we don't have any power. They have all the power, blah, blah, blah. But no, we stood up, we said no, and we stopped that part of the agenda. So I do believe we can. And they even say this themselves. The Climate Change Committee have a document, and it outlines clear as day, if we do not change how the population think, feel, and act, they won't go along with our agenda. And if they don't, we're not going to be successful. So it's like, they know this. They know that we have the power, but they have to figure out how to get us to give it away to them.
So would you describe yourself as red-pilled and not black-pilled?
Yeah, probably red and a blend of red and white. Yeah, because I think the spiritual stuff, it wasn't long after I woke up politically that I found this spiritual journey and that really helped to balance out the negativity, because it can be a lot of looking at the darkness, a lot of all of this suffering and terrible things. But to balance it out, I'm really grateful I discovered spirituality not long after that. And it's been a very good balancer. And there's certain things I think that come into play that I believe when you develop yourself spiritually, it does actually help you become a better activist, for sure.
So yeah, I'm hearing more about the spirituality stuff lately. I'm not a fan of Scott Adams, but I think he was talking about that he's seeing a trend towards that now.
Yeah, so what's happening in the UK is for centuries we've been a Christian country, and for one reason or another that's changing dramatically. And I think it's, on one hand, it's kind of dangerous, but on the other hand, it provides an amazing opportunity, because although I think for the era of our society, Christianity was really good and it helped a lot of people and it got us to where we are now. And there's still some really good parts. There are many parts that just I think what's happened is we've collectively evolved a bit. We've grown up a bit. We're actually living a bit longer than we did a few hundred years ago, by quite a bit, actually. So all of this is like, suddenly we are actually collectively growing a bit. And so now some of the parts of Christianity just aren't working and resonating anymore. Some man up in the sky is just sort of looking down on me. People are just like, what? or a lot of this fear-based approach was like, do this or it's hell forever. People just like, I don't really want to be told and spoken to like that. But then I still think we need to have some form of spirituality to be a complete being. Otherwise, if people are atheists, I think that's honestly the worst of the lot, and that is not very helpful for a lot of people. I mean, there are a small percentage of people that make it work, and they're still a good person, they still have good morals, and they've still got a good state of mind, and they have purpose and all of this. But generally speaking, I think majority of people will be much better with some form of spiritual faith. And I think if you've got the time and the energy and the motivation to find your own way, that is the best approach, because it's different from Christianity, which says this is the only way to do the spiritual path. It's this way or the highway. And for me, that didn't work. But once I took the time and energy and effort to find my own path, I've taken the best from Christianity, I'll take the best from Buddhism, I'll take the best from the Gnosticism, Hermeticism. And because of the internet, you can find all of these really powerful, empowering spiritual texts and find what works for you. Build your own spirituality, and I think that's actually the best way. But it takes quite a bit of time and energy, because effectively, if you reject Christianity, you are starting at zero. And there's a lot of wisdom in Christianity, although there's a lot of manipulation. But then you've got to start, and you've got to figure out all of this stuff that's taken other people lifetimes to figure out. But then if you find the right sources, and this is why I've written a book called Spirituality Without the Bullshit, that's separate to the climate stuff, and that incorporates my spiritual journey and what I found. But it's really great. It's like there's a really amazing author. He's dead now, but you got Stuart Wilde, and he has some awesome perspectives. And I really like his quote where it's like, okay, so you could walk up the mountain and take this long, windy path to get to the guru, speak to him and get the wisdom. Or you can take a helicopter, fly into the guy, get the wisdom and get out of there and get to the next mountain, talk to the next guru. And that's the modern world with the internet. And I really like his way of putting it, because that's kind of what I've done with this book, is cherry picking the best of the best, and just cutting out everything that doesn't work. Yeah, because with going this path, there can be quite a few traps you can end up going. And I think our enemies have purposefully created the certain narratives and beliefs in people to keep them going in circles and do self-harm, whilst believing they think they're doing something spiritual. And I've gone down some of them, and that's why I write in the book, I'm like, be careful of this, watch out for that, because this can happen. And I just think maybe it's a coincidence, but there seems to be a big push in the climate side of things to get people to become a vegan. And I think there's a small part of people that would work for them. For the majority of people, I think they'd be better with meat. But isn't it such a coincidence that also within a lot of the spiritual stuff, that a lot of people think you have to be a vegan or a vegetarian to be spiritual? And I don't think any of that is necessary at all. But it's like, why has there been an agenda over here in the climate stuff and the spiritual stuff? Why is this being pushed so much? And I think that we can look into that, how it doesn't work for most people. But yeah, I think that's a coincidence. I think there's been some very smart people somewhere who figured out how can we psychologically manipulate people subtly? And that's a part of it, yeah.
Remind me of the timeline again of your spirituality or your awakening. Was it just recently with maybe around COVID?
No, so my awakening happened when I was 18, and I was at my first ever job, and I was college, 2 years mechanical engineering, then straight from that I went to be a CAD technician, and I was just sort of following the motions, like, this is the approved path, my parents like this, blah, blah. And then within that period, I started to question what's going on, and it was getting taxed that really did it for me. I'm like, where's 20% of my wages even going before I get anything to do with it? It's like just vanishing before my eyes. And then I started looking into the banking system and looked at the national debt. And at the time, it was like £60 billion is just being paid on the interest on the national debt. And it's even worse now. That was like, 13 years ago. It's like 100 billion plus now. It just keeps getting bigger. So that all sort of culminated, and I started reading some of Steve Pavlina's material. But there was this one moment when I was at work. I was supposed to be working, but I just started reading articles online. And there was reading something, and this energy just like went up the back of my neck and into my head, and like ding. I was like, we're being fucked. That was my awakening moment, and my life was never the same since. Shortly after that, I went really hard into the romantic rebellious phase that a lot of people go through, where you just talk to everybody about this, anyone who was in my and within my field of energy was getting blasted with all of the 9/11, the banking system, all of this stuff. But then it wasn't too long after that that I had my spiritual awakening and started getting into meditation, and eventually sort of calmed down from the original gung-ho point, and started I realized that I'm most effective not when I'm trying to wake people up, but actually when I'm speaking to people that are already awake. Like, my energy and time is so much better invested in that. And so that's a quick sort of roundup. But yeah, it's been quite a journey since then. I started the activist stuff back then and had some good success with a Facebook page. We learned how to think. That did really, really well. And initially that was literally started from me being at parties and talking to people and just being like, hey, look, I have a Facebook page. And that's how it began. And then back then the Facebook algorithm was really good and it was really easy to grow a page. Within a year, it had 50,000 likes. And then when I quit my job, there's a bit of a transition period, but things got very hard for me. And thankfully, I did have spirituality, and I found Qigong as well, which was really, really great for me. And then I went traveling around 2016 after a very hard part of my life. And that's when I discovered my gifts and talents for writing and speaking and music. And then over the years, I was building up a personal brand of that. And that was all happening until COVID kicked in. And there was like everything focused on this. Then now it's come out a bit, and now it's when it was the climate, but also the spiritual stuff as well. Because I think although we have these political problems right now, and we are in a situation where we have to do this activist stuff, because if we don't fight back, our enemies are just going to steamroll us. We have to take a step back and look, how did we actually get in this situation long term? And I do believe it's this culmination of our spiritual weakness. It may impacting the choices that we make over the years, day by day. And that is how evil's got into positions of power. It's a lack of, for example, why so many people complied in the COVID madness was because it was a lack of courage. And if they'd have developed themselves spiritually or personal development, got themselves to be more powerful and connected to their true self, they would not be wearing a bloody mask to go to do the shopping because of some 99% survival rate. But because there was a lacking of this spiritual development, people were so easily programmed and not very strong mind and so on. That's why they went along with it. That's a big, big reason. So if we were look at how are we going to solve this long term, I do think we actually need better people for a better world. I don't know if even within our lives we're going to see that come to fruition, but I know that's the long-term goal. Like, that could take decades or longer to get there. But just a quick example of how I've seen this play out is, again, bringing it back to when I was in the COVID activist movement. A lot of great people got together to work together. However, because of our lack of development, there was infighting and bickering and betrayal. And even when we had an enemy at the front gates trying to destroy our way of life, we're still fighting between ourselves. And it's like, if we don't sort our shit out, there's no hope of us ever, we were very successful, but we could have been so much more successful if we had been able to work together effectively, if we weren't acting from our lower nature, our conditioning, our programming, and more connected with our true source. So that's how I think we win long term, is actually the spiritual game. But it's a process of getting there.
So you mentioned the big problem with the money and the debt. Do you have ideas there on how to fix the money or how to fix that problem?
Yeah, so I guess it's like looking at where does it start to go wrong, and I think we can go quite back in our history, and I wonder if we'd kept with like sound money, like a gold-backed system, would that have stopped this massive manipulation of our monetary system? It probably would have helped, because now the government just print how much they want and the currency is getting inflated away. Will that be the solution for what we have now? Maybe, maybe not. Do we need to have a financial reset? I don't know. These are challenging problems to deal with, because it's all interconnected. One country, if we did something like that, it would affect the whole world. Does everything then come crashing down? Is Bitcoin or crypto the answer? Perhaps, but then that's, a lot of people don't like that because it's digital, and I understand that people don't like that. But when you look into it, it's like, it seems like the opposite of a central bank digital currency. It's decentralized money. Will that be the answer? Perhaps. For sure, though, what we have is completely twisted and backwards. And what I think unfortunately ends up happening is people then start to hate on money itself. They think, oh, money is evil and it's dirty and it's wrong. And it's like, Actually, I think our enemies want you to believe that, because then you're stuck in poverty consciousness, and you need money. The more money you have, the more powerful you can be. You don't need it, but it becomes very, very useful. And look, for example, Bill Gates would be completely useless and not a threat at all if he was broke. If Bill Gates had a 10 after his name, he would not be able to do this grand scheme, evil agenda, and pay for the advertising, all of this stuff. So it's only because he has a lot of money that he's able to do that. And so I don't think money is evil. It's just that the creation of it, the management of it has been put into evil hands, and then it's been manipulated in every possible way that it could be manipulated. But I do believe we do need money of some way, shape, or form. And if we really put our heads together and we're able to somehow have it be transparent and incorruptible, that we could have a functioning monetary system, and it would be so, so much better.
How do you keep up with this whole fire hose of information climate-wise? Do you spend a lot of time each day reading the news, and you're everywhere on Google News, etc.?
Yeah, so I have a good few sources, and the X algorithm can be quite useful now. If you interact with enough of the climate stuff, it will just keep showing you climate stuff, so that's quite handy. And then also, yeah, there's Google Alerts, so you can set them up to be alerted when there's a new thing about climate or net zero. There's endless stuff being posted, though, so you never be able to read all of it. I've noticed that for the climate, there's like 2 categories of content that they create, and one of them is the latest news updates, and I'll write an article or do a quick social post and so on. Or there's what I call like the evergreen content or the timeless content, which is more on the science stuff, which is relevant forever. And so they're the 2 sort of categories of content I find I create, and I really enjoy learning about the climate stuff, because it's when I done a deep dive into all of this material, a lot of the negativity that I had around, because even though I knew it was part of their agenda, when I first saw Paul Burgis's video and he's saying more CO2, please, I'm like, what? We want more CO2? Like, really? Like, everything I've heard is the complete opposite of that. But suddenly it's like, and that takes a bit of reinforcing. But once you get there, it's like, wow, okay, so the usage of fossil fuels isn't actually destroying the planet, because CO2 is the gas of life. And we want more CO2 because it'd be really good for the plants. And because there is actually more CO2, the earth is greening. And because the earth is greening, it's good for life. And it's like, but this has been a thing. It's like, coming from the cold, cloudy, dark UK, when I heard global warming, I was like, yes, please give us some of that, because I think that would be really, really great. I think there's only if you've been hit with a monumental amount of propaganda that you're living in the UK and you don't think global warming is a good thing. And then when you actually look into it, it's like, yeah, it would be really good for like nearly all life on Earth. Who says that this is the perfect climate? Why wouldn't we want it a little bit warmer? I mean, the energy bills would come down, and most of the life on Earth would actually be better off. I think it's a tiny percentage. I mean, who even says the polar bears want to be freezing their balls off in the ice? Like, do you think it would be better if they weren't just freezing all the time, you know? So, and then all of the land that would become available, and then there's like, well, what about the sea level rise? And then you look at some of the graphs and charts that show that most of the sea level rise has already happened, that's going to happen. It's an insignificant, tiny amount that's going to be caused by the melting of the remaining ice. And overwhelmingly, we'd get more land, growing seasons would increase. It'd be a better world if it's a little bit warmer. And then finally, just like on the warming side of things, it's like, whoa, cold is overwhelmingly the bigger killer. By nearly a factor of 10, more people are dying from cold than heat. It's like, well, let's just get this place warmer.
Fantastic. All right, we're coming up to our end of our hour here. Do you have other points you'd like to make before we finish up?
Just that, yeah, I guess just to recap that we can stop this agenda. If we come together and take action effectively, we will be able to defeat this, and who knows where we can go from there. I've lived it, and plenty of people have, that we can stop this agenda. So if you want to be involved with the Climate Con, you can find us at thegreatclimatecon.com and on the Climate Con on the social media. Got all these different ways you can get involved, and ultimately, I think if everybody just has enough of the basics understood, then we can change the culture. Then that happens incrementally over time. Each little conversation that we have, if you are sitting around the table and there's 5 of you there, and one of them believes the climate agenda, but you don't, the truth, and there's 3 people who are sort of on the middle. If they're speaking confidently, but then suddenly you come in and you can counter their arguments, those 3 people will be like listening quite curiously most of the time, right? And they'll be like, you will change culture, and that politics is downstream from culture. So if we can actually change the culture, we will have the political change that we need to then implement no more of the climate con. I don't know what I'm going to do. Once we've defeated it, I'll be down by the beach celebrating, who knows? But I do, yeah, we can stop this. And I do think we're going to.
I do think that's a great point you made, that if there's a table of 5 people and somebody is spouting climate scam nonsense, that speaking up is important. I think we need to do more of that. So.
Yeah, unfortunately, I found quite often it'll be the stupidest person at the table that's the loudest. So we need to counter that.
Very good. On that note, let's finish up. But I'm a big fan of all your work and all your energy. You're just doing a fantastic job. So Travis Cook, thank you.
Cheers, Tom. Big ups.